Well, up until now, we've been using knives and chisels for the projects that have been in the book. And what I want to do now is to introduce you to power carving. The tools that we're going to be using are quite a bit different than single-bladed instruments for cutting the wood. Of the things that I have, this is about a third of what I've collected for power carving. But these are the most necessary items. I'm going to start over here with a Fordham tool, a flexible shaft drill. It works off of a foot pedal. There is a metal shaft and spring that go from the motor to this handpiece. So by disconnecting the handpiece, there's nothing powering it anymore. This is a high-speed hand grinder. This will run 4,500 RPM, and the motor and everything is encased in the handpiece. Lightweight, very little vibration. This is more for doing detail work, smaller pieces, refining pieces, and so on. With the flexible shaft drill, there's a lot of vibration, and because of the shaft, there's a lot of pulling back on it, and so this is more of a real hard cutting instrument. Another necessary thing that you're going to have doing power carving is a dust collector. I've assembled also a variety of various cutters. It'll give you an idea of some of the things that are available. This is a carbide cutter. We also have cut saws. This is for going in fairly deep and making very narrow openings. Again, it's just a lot of sharp little teeth. Fine diamonds. With the cutting, this is not going to remove a lot of wood very quickly, not as fast as the cut saws and the carbide cutters. Various shaped stones for doing fur texturing, smoothing over rough cuts left over from some of the more aggressive cutters. This is a piece of tupelo. As I mentioned earlier, we carved in basswood and northern white pine. Tupelo is really geared more towards the power carving. So this is a small little rabbit that I had designed for this project. In a nice little pose. It's sitting in a maple leaf, kind of scratching. So I have him bolted onto my jerry rig so I can free both my hands and keep them away from the cutters. I've already bandsawed the silhouette out and lopped a few corners off of what I was just going to have to remove anyway. And I'm just trying to position where the little rabbit is going to be on the leaf base. Of course, we're starting off with the Fordham tool with the half-round ball cut saw on the end of it. And this I'm just going to basically try to shape the majority of the rabbit. In power carving, this cut saw round ball is really taking the place of one of my rough out chisels. And what this is doing is this is roughing out the basic shapes like I would be doing with my hand chisel. Only that I don't have to really be concerned about grain and the direction in which I'm cutting. This will cut with the grain, across the grain, diagonally into the grain, where with the chisel you have to be a little bit more decisive about what direction you're making your cut. With power carving, you can go anywhere. Okay, as you can see, power carving could be kind of insane as far as how fast you can really start to rough something out. I mean, it's just so spontaneous with how quickly you can do this kind of thing. Here I have the area where the rabbit's eyes will be, his cheeks, the raised foot, his paws will be coming out in the front, similar to this. So you can see in a very short amount of time, which would have taken me 3 times as long to do it with a chisel, even if I was going fairly quickly, because of the grain and having to buff up tools and so on. You can just really go and blast into this piece of wood and really start to see your form come out fairly quickly. Now I want to take a smaller cutter, the same style, a cut saw with these nice little spiked teeth on it, but smaller so I can get into more intricate areas of the carving. I have several hand pieces that I use when I'm power carving. It eliminates my having to undo the chuck and put a new bit and so on. I could just kind of click one in and I'm ready to go again. So I'm going to start working a little more in the face, getting the paws down, and I'm going to kind of construct something with the leaves. I might just take some leaves and lay them, real leaves, and just lay them around the base and just trace them out. And that's one of the best ways of carving leaves and acorns, flowers. So now I have the basic idea where I want to have the tips of the leaves curling down from underneath the rabbit. And I think on the back of the carving, I might just roll it and make it look like a little grassy, mossy kind of a hill going somewhere in the back. What I'm switching to now, because I've done most of the rough out with the big heavy ball cutter, this is a much finer bullet-nosed cut saw. What's nice about this is it's better balanced and there's virtually no vibration in it. And it also has a variable speed. So you can see how fast you can rough out a carving. And if you could think of power carving and these type of cutters, these cut saws, as all you have to do is wish the wood away, basically that's it. It's like the world's greatest wood eraser. I don't want to leave the leaf for last, so I'm going to mess around with the leaves a little bit. Just get a little more motion, do a little undercut, just kind of see where it's going to lay out. And then I'm going to finish roughing out the rabbit and then start putting in some smoothing cuts and fur texturing. This is a diamond flame detail point, and you can see how thin it is. This is basically in place of what I'll be using a detail knife for. I'm using round ruby ball to help refine the size of the rabbit. What I'm also doing is sort of setting myself up for the flow of the fur to come a little bit later. Okay, this conical shaped white stone is going to take the place of the 16V tool and the 3mm. This is my fur texturing tool, beard texturing here. I could put feathering in with it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's a lot of fun. How fast and how lively the fur texturing all of a sudden starts to appear. Now I'm going to switch from the conical white stone and I'll put a blue stone in. Now, what I'm looking to achieve is, if you look at the surface of a leaf, you see all these little lumps and bumps and squiggle lines and highs and lows and all that. The round stone is going to be able to come in and make all these lumps and bumps. And what I'm going to do is kind of go in a figure 8. I also come underneath it. So I'm going to also sort of texture the bottom of this base in the same sort of motion. Okay, now I have the tapered cone with the point, and I'm going to go back and clean up all the little chitters, little fuzzies that are in here. Once in a while when I'm doing these leaves, I'm going to just poke it. Leaves in the forest have bug holes. It gives a little bit more interest to the overall texturings of the leaves. Kicks the whole thing up another notch. I've got the little rabbit and this part of the leaf textured about as far as I want to take it. But I want to clean up the surface a little bit more. You'll see there's some little fuzzies still hanging on, and I'm going to take basically this Scotch-Brite pad and I just make a little round disc. I'm just going to kind of go over the whole carving with it, and these little fibers are going to help remove a lot of those fuzzies. If you like the texturing the way it is, just after we put it in with the stoning, that's fine. You know, go ahead and start painting. But I like a little bit more refinement to it. I want to bring out a little bit more realism. And to do that, I'm going to use some wood burners. And a wood burner is just a handpiece that heats up. Just as it says, it's going to burn the wood. Various tips are going to give you various results. I like a knife tip, and this is basically the same design as my detail blades that I carve with. Slightly sweep up to the tip and a little hollow grind behind the back so I can get into tight areas, and I can make a tight radius with it. I can make curves. It's not very fat, so it's going to make a very thin little line. Now, the wood burning on this piece was done for a variety of reasons. My use for a wood burner is not only to refine what I've carved, but I also use this to undercut areas. You see where the little lower jaw is? I use the wood burner at a little higher setting to create a shadow, and the shadow in between the toes. So I'm creating not only a finer look to the fur, but I'm also creating shadows. So when I start to paint, I already have basically a built-in shadow. This piece is pretty much ready to paint. I use oil-based stains for 95% of my work. So I paint in very thin washes. The paint is almost transparent so that the shadows will show through. The wood burning is used for texture, cleaning up areas, and shadow. The wood burner tip, depending on the size and the width of it, is going to depend on how hot it's going to get and how fast it's going to heat up. Each type of wood that you're using is going to burn differently also. So take a scrap piece of wood and just kind of see how it's going to burn for you, how dark it is. I'm going to do this really slow for a few times so you kind of see what I'm doing with it. Remember, we were always talking about curving lines, and as I was cutting the fur texturing, you saw I was kind of giving curves and twists and all that. I do the same thing with a wood burner. I'm just accenting with the wood burner and refining what I've carved in to make it smaller and more realistic like. Now, one thing about wood burning tips, every time the tip touches the wood, it cools down somewhat, and then it has to heat up again. And you know, I might burn really fast for about a half an hour, and then I might start to slow down. I'm going to start seeing my burn marks are getting darker at the back of the rabbit than they were up here, and that's probably because I've slowed down a little bit. So I'll knock the temperature down in accordance with my speed and what I'm looking for as far as the burn results are. So again, practice a little bit. Lower is better. Subtle is always better than overkill. The wood burner is also used to accent a transition point. Transition from the fur of the arm on top of the leaves. I don't want a straight edge because that looks unnatural. What I'm looking for is to have a splaying of fur, so I'll take the wood burner and I'll make a few little tufts of fur that just kind of laying on there in a more natural feel than if I just took and made a straight line. So I'll take some of the fur and let it just look a little unkept. Okay, now if I want to make some bug holes, or we carve some in, well, maybe we need a couple here. So I'll use the wood burner tip and just wiggle a little round hole. And that gives me another bug hole. And then accent the vein. Now you can see how the burning, not only in the fur texturing, the underlying area, the transition areas, underscoring leaves, everything starts really coming to life. All the forms, the shapes, the textures really are punched up so much more. You know, this little rabbit has glass eyes. You can carve your eyes, or you could use glass eyes. With the realistic wildlife stuff, I like the glass eyes. What you're going to do is we're going to drill a hole. We're going to mix up that ribbon 2-part epoxy, fill the hole with the epoxy, squeeze the eyes in, and create the eyelid. The eyelids on this eye are different than the eyelids on this one. Because his little foot is pushing his cheek up a little bit, his eye's not going to be totally open, and it gives a much more relaxed look. And all I do is I take some of the epoxy and I push it up, and it looks like he's scratching and his fur is being pushed up and his eyes somewhat half closed. Now, one of the most important uses that I have for a wood burner is that each of the carvings I've ever done since I was a child have always been signed and dated. Taking the time to put a little personal signature on your carving is a really nice touch.